Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Story number 1. Human Proofing, written by Agro. Have you ever tried to give a human out of something? I have, and it's an extremely difficult task. Most species seek a keep outside and do just that. For humans, it makes them curious. Let me start from the beginning. I work as a security contractor, and my current contract involves securing a human elixir called wine. Basically, you let the slurry of plant produce sit in a container for several months, and it turns into something quite tasty. All I have to do in order to get paid is keep it under lock and key for 8 months, and I get paid. However, these humans really are determined to get to it. My client told the human that we had 3 metric tons of the stuff in storage. Within 6 hours, it was raided by pirates. So, naturally, for the next batch we hired more guards. They hired more pirates. Then we tried taking the security up to 11. We had amp mines, a network of self-replicating attack drones, laser nets, and enough anti-armor shells to level a small mountain. The humans brought capital ships. To be clear, the wine was worth nowhere near close to the cost of the strike force that they used to steal it. I'm told that they took it as a challenge. Refusing to try that again, we tried a different approach. We purchased a small moon that had been mined for rare metals. The result was a single narrow mine shaft leading to the core of the moon, which was hollowed out. Being made almost entirely of titanium, no one was going to break through. The gate was designed to vaporize anyone that went through. Due to electrical interference, it would only work about 80% of the time. Apparently, when you tell a human that they will probably die, but if they don't, you get some very expensive wine. A lot of people show up to take those odds. Feeling desperate, we hired several police officers to stand guard. Anyone who would try to steal the wine would get a warrant for their arrest. It was stolen, and people who stole it left their IDs behind. I'm told that they are using their wanted posters as a trophy now. Now I'm going to try and put the wine in a research station positioned in the corona of a star. Hopefully, being hot enough to turn most metals into plasma will deter those humans. I'll get paid one of these days. End of story. Story number 2. Thoughts and Prayers, written by Hypothetical Shoggoth. Every time the Data Weave carried the news of some calamity in one of the accorded territories, they responded. The humans' worlds were poor, sparsely populated, only 1 star's worth of territory. Their people were only able to permanently inhabit perhaps 10-20% of the surface of their world, but they were admirably industrious in the rest. You had to give them that. Every time they somehow managed to fill a cargo vessel with aid and a few specialists, they'd launch their ships across the stars with a response time that would beggar many of the larger signatories, meager though their offering may be. They could not go without offering what they could. They were for the poor neighbor that everyone appreciated having on the block, who had a noticeable benefit to every project they volunteered their resources to. Some civilizations tend to be quiet, barely bumping elbows with their nearest peers. There were several monastic convocations who spanned broad arcs of space, but rarely spoke up in the grand councils. Sometimes colonies focused their efforts on expanse, or an empire closed its borders due to internal strife. It just happens sometimes. However, it happened. It was years before the community at large had noticed that a wedge of space had gone quiet. A wedge that had started up in the upspin outer part of the arm, and worked its way slowly deeper. Some queries had been logged, but there was always some more urgent call for action and kept the Accord territory's attention. Meetings were being held with the Grand Council to see if an expedition could be arranged to confirm all was well with the Quiet Zone. Perhaps the inhabitants had found an especially intriguing thread of philosophy that they wanted to meditate on. Perhaps the locals were throwing grand festivals and didn't want to down armed roadies making a mess of things. Perhaps someone had decided to wage war of expansion without first filling out a form Bellicrose 83D or Intervention Packet 27.6-D. The council was in the middle of the third day of votes on approving a meeting's agenda, when the ship popped out of a blink drive at the edge of the council station's security cordon. From the initial information, it belonged to one of the police navies that were in the quiet zone, one of their mid-high-end ships. Something had cleanly sheared off the back third at an angle. War is a tricky word. Sometimes a war is fought without any weapons ever leaving the arsenal. Sometimes enough participants die to haunt a sector forevermore. But nobody will meet a historian's eyes and call it a war. There's still a debate whether this counted as a war or an industrial accident. The survivors on the ship gave a testimony to the Grand Council. Machine ships arrived at the edge of their sovereign territory and started capturing every physical object large enough to track on sensors. Any attempts to object led to the transmission source being sought out as the next harvesting site. All raw materials, from biomass to mineral resources, appeared to be converted into more ships. The human representative in the lower council was recorded expleting in 13 languages and saying something into a red-colored comm unit in their active podium about one human scenario. The rest of the council was somewhat preoccupied and calling up a scenario calls for an aggressive fleet of this nature. The peacekeeper fleets and the more militant council members were called to action per the accords. Near the end of the meeting, as representatives were hurrying to break and discuss with their governments, the human representative gave an expected vow of aid as well. Though, with their obvious lack of a navy, they promised material supplies and that they would be sending thoughts and prayers. The Harvester War went as expected. The factory harvester ships would slice apart any vessel that they were able to break from the formations and focus upon, soon fabricating new harvesters. It became a war of attrition, of grand maneuvers and cunning ambushes, sheer, unrelenting drive and resolute defense. Throughout the fleets, members of the various races were lauded as heroes, grand tacticians, brilliant engineers, many, so many selfless martyrs, individuals taking a broken ship to detonate it in the midst of an enemy formation, allowing their allies time to regroup. But attrition favored the machine. Human volunteers and war aid showed up in almost every engagement as time wore on. There weren't many of them, in the grand scheme of things, but they made their presence felt. All the while, they swore the same thing. Humanity was sending their thoughts and prayers. It was a grim, bemused line all of their allies heard time and time again. Back at the humans' world, life continued. Shipyards were brought, shipyards were wrought. At the edge of the system, they built a blink gate of unprecedented size, large enough to be able to reach up and down the arm. When challenged on this, asked why they didn't use those resources to aid the war effort, the humans rebutted with a statement of how better could they send their thoughts and prayers than with a gate that could reach all of accorded space. As the gate was powered on for the first official jump, council signatories caught the edge of the message beamed at it. Terra Actual, Terra Nova, gate open, thoughts and prayers clear. Odd, as celebratory messages go, but anyone who'd worked with humans had grown inured to their quirks. The fact that all human craft were making best possible speed for the far side of the nearest planets, sheltering from the gate, was also odd. But gates could be impressive if they detonated mid-transit. What followed was lost to senses as gravitational wake of something washed over the observer vessels. Something big. Something fast. Over the system-wide communications, humans could be heard cheering, popping open celebratory beverages, and widely repeating the phrase, thoughts and prayers. The peacekeeper fleet had assembled in a quiet swath between the stars. It was a bit ragged at the edges, with no ships present unscathed from the ongoing conflict. The various admiralties stood on their ships, largely wondering the wisdom of this plan the humans had somehow talked them into. A heroic stand that would make or break the defenses. Draw enough of the Harvester Armada out into the void and break them. That their remainder would be easy hunting. A fine, heroic battle for the ballads and history books. Harrowing took place in person. The humans, however, had run the numbers, checked the approach vectors, and cross-checked all top 100 probabilities. This mad plan of theirs had the best chance of success. The human admiral certainly was infectious as well. Our thoughts and prayers will be with you, indeed. Ahead of the fleet, the stars began to shimmer as the harvester vessels began insinuating themselves into the area in their version of a blink jump. The fleet had been wide-casting in the direction of harvested regions for some time now. Maximum power, all ships, calling the enemy to come. One, come all, to win or fall. That was an awful lot of harvester ships. The stars ahead of them were teeming with new lights, seething amongst themselves like vast schools of deep-sea fish, like swarms of locusts, like machines set on eating everyone and everything. The human had a near manic grin on his face. Of course it did. The ship swayed like an ancient nautical vessel twice as someone maneuvered their ship too close to the flagship. The lights flickered as the gravitational backwash flowed over the circuitry. Wait. The fleet is still. Silent. Static. Poised. Silence on the bridge, then threat response, first from the crew, as their instincts scream about something being different, wrong. Then the sensors tell them that their eyes had caught, but discounted. To either side of the fleet, vast portions of space had disappeared. Walls of darkness hemmed them in. The human was now laughing, and the Admiralty recognized the specific sound after a moment. This was, something terrible is about to happen to my foes. Admiralty of the fleet, might I present to you the Nova Breaker class emergency response vessels, thoughts and prayers of the Terran Home Sector Fleet, designed to be the flagships of our emergency response fleet in the face of stellar instability or cataclysmic tectonics. They are capable of pushing around entire arcs of asteroid belts, redirecting stellar geysers, or shifting planetary plates in a pinch. The human admiral fished a pair of sunglasses from his pocket and placed them on, turning to face the meter-tall tactical screens as the twin walls of stars burnt darkness, erupted in a star-hot fury, scouring away another dire threat. End of story. Just a quick shout-out to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Cat Crab Lobster, Data Magnet, Dark Machine, Bezic, Try Again 95, Fudic Yol, Astrea the Dreamer, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Athelia, Meridian 117, and Jordan Bucksmorm. Thank you very much. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed. There are links down below, both to support this channel and for the author of this fiction. Anyways, I hope you all have a fantastic one, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.